Now, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a 1974 grindhouse horror movie that tells the story of how an idyllic summer road trip turns into a nightmare when a group of youngsters come face to face with a family of psychopathic cannibals. And here are 5 reasons you should watch this movie. Reason number 1, teenagers.
This heat is just driving me crazy.
So teenagers Kirk, Pam, Jerry, Sally, and Franklin are driving down to Texas town to visit Sally and Franklin's family's old slaughterhouse. The goal was to have a nice little drive, check out some sights, and have a little intimate evening by visiting property once owned by their family.
My granddaddy's buried here. Could we find out if anything happened to him?
But little did they know that their plans would change as they meet a stranger going in the same direction.
Hitchhiker.
Should we pick him up?
Reason number 2, hitchhiker. So the crew come across a guy who's looking to hitch a ride. And though he's not explicitly named, the audience will come to know him as Nubens. Nubens is an eccentric dude who enjoys photography and talking about life on the slaughterhouse farm.
They take the head and they boil it, except for the tongue. And they scrape all the flesh away from the bone.
But when he and Franklin start to bond, the two realize that their families are pretty similar as they come from the same sort of familial occupation.
I was at the slaughterhouse.
I got an uncle that works at a slaughterhouse.
But things quickly escalate when Nubens start to scare the teens with his vivid photos of mutilated animals and even practice of the occult.
I was the killer.
Damn.
Let me see him.
But Nubens then attacked Franklin with a razor, cutting both Franklin and then himself. And he is then kicked out of their vehicle as they continue their drive. But Nubens then smears blood on their van and warns them of their impending doom. Reason number 3, Leatherface. And when the teenagers arrive at their destination, they start to look around and quickly notice that there's a lot of animal bones and carcasses. And while it's pretty normal to see that at a slaughterhouse, things take a turn for the worse when Kirk walks into what looks like to be an abandoned house and is attacked with a sledgehammer by a hulking masked man. Pam attempts to look for Kirk. She is then chased and hoisted onto a meat hook by the same masked man that bludgeoned Kirk. This ultimately leads Jerry to look for them both, and that masked man then bludgeons Jerry and starts to mutilate the bodies of the rest of the victims with a chainsaw. That man is known as Leatherface. Reason number 4, the family. With only Sally and Franklin left, as nightfall occurs, they get worried and try to look for their friends. But Franklin is attacked by Leatherface when he is chopped up by Leatherface's chainsaw. Leaving only Sally as the sole survivor, she runs for her life and goes to find solace at a gas station where they stopped off earlier. But to her surprise, Sally is attacked and then taken hostage by the store's owner. She soon finds herself in the home of the store owner, the hitchhiker, the masked Leatherface, and their patriarch known as Grandpa.
You like this, Dave?
Now with nowhere to go and no one to turn to, Sally must survive and fight to stay alive, or else fall prey at the hands of the Slaughter family. Reason number 5, Massacre. Now this movie, by most people's account, is very bloody, and I've seen people say that this movie is too scary to watch for its brutal violence and sadistic nature. However, you would be surprised that though this movie is perceived as gory, it's not really bloody at all. I mean, filmmaker Tobe Hooper's intention was to make a movie that was a PG film, but his use of implied violence by the way of sound, cinematography, and audience psychology was done so well that the movie kept being sent back to him with an X rating. Now, X ratings back in the 70s was reserved for porn and ultra-graphic depictions of violence. And though the Texas Chainsaw Massacre had no sex scenes and practically no blood and no explicit violent acts, after numerous resubmissions to the MPAA, it finally got an R rating. So as a viewer, when you watch this movie, you are merely filling in the gaps of what's happening. And this is what makes the Texas Chainsaw Massacre a timeless classic. Now in the end, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is probably the greatest horror movie ever made. I mean, this movie's intended purpose was to serve as a dark comedy. And no one got the joke. I mean, this isn't a bad thing. This is Tobe Hooper and his crew creating lightning in a bottle. Now, during this original run, it was the Terrifier of its day. It was the Art the Clown, but better. Now, with Terrifier, we go into knowing that we are getting an actual movie. Most people at the time thought that they were watching a snuff film, and this made many of the believers walk out of the theater, vomit, and protest against what they believed to be too violent for public showing. They believed that the people dying on camera were true depictions of real life deaths. This was probably due to the film's opening monologue that sells this as a historic event. But even people who watch this with a modern day lens have felt that this movie was too violent to watch. And that is the magic of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, a movie I highly recommend.
Oh, where you keep the golden oldies and maybe the new music.
Now, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is a 1986 black comedy horror movie that tells the story of how 13 years after the original Texas Massacre, a sheriff along with a radio DJ investigates brand new murders happening in and around the area. And here are 5 reasons you should watch this movie. Reason number 1, Stretch. So Vanita Stretch Brock is a local DJ who works for KISS 100 FM radio in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. She has aspirations of being a journalist and covering real news. But when 2 pranksters call her radio station one night, she unbeknowingly becomes a witness to a brutal murder as the Sawyer clan kills the teenagers. But not wanting to leave any witnesses, the Sawyers attempt to kill Stretch, but their plans are foiled due to Stretch using her feminine wiles on one of the attackers.
Really? Good.
Now, while trying to find evidence on the Sawyers, she is then kidnapped by the family in hopes of them killing her off for good.
Dog wheel hunt! Get that bitch, Leatherface! Get that bitch!
Reason number 2, Lefty.
I'm the Lord of the Harvest.
Now, bold Lefty Enright is an out-of-town sheriff who's been investigating a rash of slayings in the rural Texas area. Now, Lefty understands the pain of the families and victims as he's the uncle of Sally and Franklin from the original massacre back in 1973. But after coming to town and studying the motives of the killers, Lefty assumes that the killers are from the same area. He teams with Stretch to lure the killers out of hiding. This then leads him to the compound of the Sawyers and thus pits him in a head-to-head battle with the cannibalistic family themselves. Reason number 3, Drayton.
It's a dog-eat-dog world, and from where I sit, there just ain't enough damn dog.
So Drayton Sawyer, also known as the Cook, is the functioning leader of the cannibalistic Sawyer family. We meet back up with Drayton 13 years after the original film. Now he's now taking the lead rather than just being one of the crew. And Drayton is first seen winning a chili making contest to where he flaunts his cannibalistic charm after winning the first prize by insisting that he knows what prime meats look like.
No secret, it's the meat. Don't skimp on the meat.
But while on his way back to the family, he overhears a recording of the murders of the teenagers and that Stretch, the radio DJ, is a witness.
You cool shit. You butt-crackers, you'll be the death of me yet.
He then orders his young brothers Chop Top and Leatherface to kill Stretch in order to keep her quiet. And this would allow them to continue their murder and feed off the citizens of Texas.
I love this town. This town loves prime meat.
Reason number 4, Chop Top.
You're my fave.
So Robert Sawyer, also known as Chop Top, is the twin brother of Nuben Sawyer, the hitchhiker from the 1973 massacre. While he was fighting in the Vietnam War during the events of 1973, he's now home and serves as the helper and mouthpiece for Leatherface.
Hurry up, Leatherface! Hurry up! Get that bitch!
So Chop Top developed the name because he was wounded during the war and had to have a metal plate grafted onto his skull. But after overhearing that radio DJ Stretch had evidence that tied he and his brother to the deaths of those teenagers, They are sent by Drayden to kill off Stretch, a plan that does not succeed. But once they capture Stretch, he is thrust into a one-on-one battle with the DJ, a scenario where he finally gets to finish off the job himself. Reason number 5, Leatherface. So Bubba Sawyer, also known as Leatherface, is the face and motivation behind the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Though he serves as the family's muscle and guard dog, he is socially inept and is completely helpless without someone to tell him what to do. So Bubba earned the name Leatherface by killing and cutting the faces off his victims and wearing their face as a mask. But when he and his brother Chop Top are sent to kill Stretch, we find out that Bubba has a crush on Stretch and leaves her alive. So he then spends the entire movie trying to hide the fact that he left her alive, often hiding her from the family, even when he first notices that she's at their compound. But when Lefty raids their home, Leatherface and Lefty come face to face in one final showdown. Now in the end, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 was just as good as the original, if not better. So Tobe Hooper meant for the original to be a black comedy, and no one got the joke. But this time around, he made everything bigger. The setting, the kills, language, and yes, even the blood. I mean, this time we knew what we got. A dark comedy horror, and everything was more overt and in your face. And I like the inclusion of Chop Top and making Drayden take over the lead in this movie. I mean, this version of the Sawyers fit the tone of this movie very well. And I know a lot of people would like Chop Top in more movies, but I'm not sure Drayden and Chop Top would fit the tone in every movie. I mean, they aren't very serious, and they're kind of cartoonish if you ask me. But do I recommend this? Now, Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 is a 1990 horror movie that tells the story of a young couple stopping at a Texas gas station, sees the owner attacking a friendly hitchhiker. So they drive off frantically and end up taking a wrong turn. A turn that will see them as the targets of the believed to be dead Leatherface and his family.
Oh my God! It's coming from behind us!
And here's 5 reasons why you should watch this movie. Reason number 1, W.E. Sawyer.
Looks like you had a little mishap.
Now, Walter Edward Sawyer is a rarely known member of the Sawyer family. And at the start of this movie, we learned that the person behind the 1973 massacre that killed Sally, Franklin, and the rest of their friends was W.E. Sawyer. However, confusion behind this person is that W.E. Sawyer was apprehended by the law and received the death penalty. So, what's so confusing? Experts believe that W.E. Sawyer killed under the alias of Leatherface, and that Leatherface was never a real person. Reason number 2, gas station.
Looks like we got some customers, ladies.
So Michelle Shatnell and Ryan MacArthur are a young couple who are currently in the midst of a potential breakup.
You mean talk or tiptoe around the real issue with chit-chat?
Now you sound exactly like my father.
They are on their way out to travel to Florida to see if they can work things out. But on their way to their destination, they stop at Last Chance gas station. And there they have a confrontation with a seedy store owner named Alfredo.
You shut the fuck up, motherfucker. This is my place. I'll do whatever I want here in my place.
Alfredo sexually harasses Michelle twice while he's supposed to be filling up her gas tank.
I'm gonna service you real good, man.
But to protect her honor is this stranger named Tex. But the two men's argument turns deadly when Michelle and Ryan sees Alfredo shoot Tex. And they drive off in a hurry, but end up off course.
Turn right! Go!
Reason number 3, the trap. So Michelle and Ryan, in a desperate attempt to escape what they believe to be a murder, goes off course and end up on an isolated Texas road. A road where they are found, harassed, and even threatened.
Oh my God, what do they want from us?
Now, this entire commotion makes them lose control of their car and they crash. Now, while trying to repair their car back to working condition, the couple are then attacked by a chainsaw-wielding masked man known as Leatherface.
Let's hit it.
Now, as it turns out, The entire confrontation between Tex and Alfredo was staged to veer the couple off course and have them to take a road that leads to the Sawyer compound. Reason number 4, Benny.
Fuck you, mister.
So the couple crossed paths with a local survivalist named Benny, where they almost hit each other while driving down a dark, isolated road. But Benny helps the couple, but while trying to go and get help for them, he is distracted and attacked by a seemingly good Samaritan named Tinker and Leatherface. But he managed to survive the attacks. So we later see Benny resurface once Ryan is killed and Michelle is captured. But Benny manages to rescue Michelle with his guns and survivalist instincts, thus killing several members of the Sawyer family. This makes the surviving Sawyers angry at him and put him in the direct path of Leatherface and his murderous family.
God damn it, boy. You get the meat.
Reason number 5, the Sawyers.
I always had a problem with this hit to the head business.
Now in this movie, the Sawyers consist of Junior Sawyer, aka Leatherface, his brothers Tinker, Tex, and Alfredo, and then we are introduced to Ann Mama Sawyer, who is the leader of the bunch, and even a barely alive version of Grandpa Sawyer. But last but not least, the youngest of the crew is Baby Sawyer, who is unassuming but a twisted little girl that carries around the skeletal remains of what appears to have been a dead baby dressed up as a doll. So, Baby Sawyer is confirmed to be the daughter of Leatherface, perhaps one of the children he conceived when capturing a past female victim.
Maybe we could let Junior play, son. He does make the sweetest damn babies, you know.
Now in the end, Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3, is another good chainsaw film in the franchise, one that I highly recommend. So, a big reason these movies outside of the first two get a bad rap by fans is because they can't seem to canonize them. So, let me help you make the Texas Chainsaw Massacre make sense. The first movie is probably what actually happened, at least in the context of the movie's universe. And part 2 is a hypothetical scenario if the Sawyers were active in the 1980s. So part 1 is the only one that truly happened. And for the next however many films, we have to remember that the person telling the story is a disembodied voice played by John Larroquette. And I believe he knows the true story, and maybe because he's actually the trucker from part 1, who we never see again. Since the police never really found concrete evidence to Sally's claims, every version that occurs after part 1 is someone's retelling of the events that actually occurred. I mean, think about it like this. The reason I can say this is because the family members change, the dates change, the victims change, and even the identity of Leatherface changes. However, the story of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is an urban legend that has evolved over time with each retelling. So, all of the movies are connected because they're being told by someone different each time. And it's the only event that's been confirmed by the police. And that, my friends, makes all of the movies canon.
Stop, you're scaring me.
Scaring you? You're not scared. You don't know shit about being scared, little girl, not yet.
Now, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation is a 1994 dark comedy slasher that tells the story of how a group of friends leaving the prom crash their vehicle. But while looking for help, they run into a sadistic, cannibalistic family. And here are 5 reasons you should watch this movie. Reason number 1, prom night. Now, we first pick up where the teenagers Heather Hutchins, Barry Rochester, and a girl named Jenny and Sean Kingsley are leaving the prom. They are involved in a car accident where the passenger is seriously injured. But while trying to go and get help, they come in contact with an insurance agent named Darla.
Like I'm even interested.
So Darla calls her boyfriend, Vilmer, to help the teens out. But the teens go on their way back to the crash site to wait on Vilmer. Unfortunately for them, Vilmer is not the good Samaritan they were hoping for.
You want scared? You want scared? Have a look behind you.
Reason number 2, the Calvary.
You okay? Boy's dead.
So Vilmer Slaughter, the boyfriend of Darla, makes his way back to the crash site and declared the injured boy dead.
No, he's not. He's just passed out.
But when Sean insists that the boy isn't dead, Vilmer then snaps the guy's neck and attempts to go after Sean.
He's dead now.
So Sean manages to run away for a short period of time.
I don't even think about running off down that road. I think I do you damn bit good, I can tell you that right now.
What are you gonna do?
Well, first, I'm gonna kill you.
Only to be hit by Vilmer's truck. Vilmer then repeatedly runs over Sean's body back and forth until he is certain that Sean is dead.
What did I do? Let's just say you're shit out of luck, son.
Reason number 3, the locals.
Hold it right there. It's okay, we had a wreck. All we want is a ride.
We later see Heather and Barry find a house while trying to search for help. They look around the house, but it appears that no one's home. But while searching for someone, they are attacked by Vilmer's brothers, W.E. and Leather Slaughter. Barry is ultimately bludgeoned to death by Leather, and Heather is chased down and stuffed in a freezer. Unable to truly contain her, Leather then removes Heather from the freezer and hangs her up on a meat hook by the back. A very gnarly but classic Leatherface move. Reason number 4, the final girl.
You sit the fuck down!
So the movie picks back up with Jenny, who has been separated from her friends, but she is then picked up by Vilmer in his truck.
I need to be walking these roads alone this time of night. Why don't you get in?
Let her realize that he is not there to help her.
I mean, that sorry son of a bitch didn't have shit for an imagination. How fucking simple can you get?
But let's just say Jenny gets the brunt of this torture. I mean, she is chased, beaten, and tortured by Vilmer and his brothers.
You think all I want to do is kill you?
I don't know.
You goddamn right you don't.
She even unbeknowingly seek out help from Darla, only to realize that Darla's part of the Slaughter family.
What the hell are you waiting for? Tie her up!
Let's see. She gets slapped by Vilmer, choked by Vilmer,
Just slit your goddamn throat.
shot with a cattle prod by W.E., and locked in a trunk and kidnapped by Darla, and eventually chased with a chainsaw by Leather. Now, while this may seem wild, this movie hasn't even scratched the surface of how wild it gets. Reason number 5, secret society.
What do you think? Oh, no.
Now, in this movie, we find out that the Slaughter family are working for a secret society known as the Illuminati. Now, much of their exploits are sponsored and paid for by a secret group led by a guy named Agent Rothman. The Illuminati's goal in this movie is to use the Slaughter family as a sort of controlled experiment to terrorize people. But we later learned that the Slaughters took the terror too far. And if you think this is about as wacky as this movie gets, trust me, there's much more. Now, in the end, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Next Generation, can only be described in one word: bonkers. Yes, the Slaughter family is working for the Illuminati, a cross-dressing Leatherface, and a Vilmer Slaughter who doesn't care who he hurts. Now, don't believe me? He consistently beats his girlfriend, Darla, goes upside his brother's W.E.'s head with a hammer, presumably killing him, berates his boss, who works for the government, as if he was a child of his.
You assume whatever you goddamn well please. Ain't no skin off my ass.
And he often cuts himself for the pleasure of it.
What if I do this?
Now, Matthew McConaughey's role as Vilmer is absolutely insane. Now, while the Texas Chainsaw Massacre will always be synonymous with Leatherface, now in this particular movie, the guy you must fear is Vilmer Slaughter. Something even the victims in this movie understand very well.
I'm sorry.
So, do I recommend it? Yes. People have hated this movie for a long time. And even Matthew McConaughey and Renée Zellweger has permanently removed themselves from ever being associated with this movie. But I stand as probably the only person who think this is one of the best in the franchise. But hey, that's just me. What about you?
Oh, God.
Yeah, of course you gotta throw in a little something extra. Just let them know it ain't Saturday morning cartoons, if you know what I mean.
Now, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a 2003 franchise reboot horror movie that tells the story of how a group of youths headed to a music concert stop for a hitchhiker who turns their weekend idyllic trip into a nightmarish house of horrors as further events unfold. And here are 5 reasons you should watch this movie. Reason number 1, hitchhiker. So Pepper Harrington, on her way to a Leonard Skinner concert, car breaks down in Mexico and she hitches a ride with Aaron Hardesty, Morgan Hardesty, Kemper Sterling, and eventual boyfriend Andy Partain. So now the group leaves Mexico to all go to the concert, but not before buying a boatload of marijuana for the road. But while riding through Dallas, Texas, they come across a female hitchhiker named Jessica Crawford. Crawford, who is seemingly shaken up while walking on this isolated road. Now after picking up Jessica, they are told that she witnessed some people die. So they decided to find some authorities to get her help. But unaware that they're going into the direction of danger, she tries to redirect their van by physically trying to take the wheel. But after fighting her off, a panicked Jessica pulls out a gun from under her dress and blows her brains out. But truly frightened, the group try to stop at a gas station to call the local sheriff, but are unable to reach him. Reason number 2, missing friend.
Andy?
Hey, you can't just go in my house.
And while waiting for the sheriff, who is fashionably late to the scene of the crime, couple Aaron and Kemper walk to a nearby house to try to get some help. But once inside, Kemper is attacked by a large masked assailant known as Leatherface. He is then taken to Leatherface's basement where he is tortured, killed, and has his face removed. But meanwhile, the rest of the crew is finally met with the presence of Sheriff Hoyt, who is by far one of the worst in law enforcement. But while helping the group remove the body of Jessica, Hoyt repeatedly made crass jokes and sexual innuendos about her corpse.
Oh, look at that. It's kind of wet down there. What you boys been doing with this dead body?
Reason number 3, dog will hunt. When Erin realizes that Kemper is missing and then come out of the old house, she returns with her friend Andy to find him, but is met with anger by its homeowner, Monty. But unable to find Kemper, Monty's true colors come to light when he threatens Erin and Andy. Confused as how this wheelchair-bound paralytic could do any harm to them, they meet his nephew, Leatherface, who then chases both teens with his massive chainsaw. So Erin manages to get away, but Andy is caught when Leatherface slices or running Andy's leg off, thus slowing him down and carrying him to his basement. A basement where Leatherface keeps his victims prepared for the slaughter. Reason number 4, is this pot?
I smell bullshit.
Now, Erin manages to catch up with the rest of the surviving crew, who are completely unaware of what happened to their friend. But Erin gets in the van and tries to drive off, but is met with Sheriff Hoyt once again. Now, Erin tries to explain the horror she witnessed, but Hoyt finds a joint that the kids were previously smoking. But this leads to him to make them get out of the vehicle while he searched both the van and them. But in reality, this is not Hoyt just doing his job. This was just his way of stalling for what was to come.
Better blow your fucking brains out right now, asshole.
Reason number 5, the Saw is family. Now, Hoyt, in an act of investigating the crimes, is using his investigation to psychologically and physically torture the surviving teens. But while being tortured by Hoyt, he takes Morgan off with him and makes a call to someone else to meet Aaron and Pepper. He then drives Morgan to Monty's house to where Morgan will be beaten and tortured even more by the sheriff. But back at the van, Leatherface attacks Pepper and Aaron. Pepper tries to run, but is caught and chopped up with Leatherface's chainsaw. He then chases Aaron, and she manages to get away and finds solace at a trailer park home, a home that houses 2 women named Henrietta and the tea lady. So the tea lady gives Aaron some tea, but it eventually knocks her out. But when Aaron wakes up, all things are revealed as the tea lady, Henrietta, Luda May, Monty, and Sheriff Hoyt are all family members, more specifically, the Hewitt family. So Aaron is taken by the clan's most vicious relative, Thomas Brown Hewitt, universally known as Leatherface. But Aaron manages to fight back and escape, and this leads to her battling for her life as she tries to avoid the hell that is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, in the end, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre from 2003 is the best in the franchise. Like some before it, it was seen as a gritty and more grounded reboot. But what made this movie stand out is that the reboot focused more on Sheriff Hoyt rather than Leatherface. And while Leatherface remains the face of the franchise and a more proficient killer, Sheriff Hoyt was the brains behind the operation. And this marks the first time the cannibalistic clan had the law on their side. I mean, they were already a force to be reckoned with, but if you give them a badge, they then become the judge, jury, and executioner for their victims. And we can't forget about the late great actor R. Lee Ermey. His acting chops of Hoyt helped gave this movie its own identity, and this brand of horror would become a staple in the early to late 2000s. So yeah, go and watch this movie. Now, Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning is a 2006 horror prequel to the 2003 reboot. Now, this movie tells the origin story of Leatherface, Sheriff Hoyt, and their murderous clan, all while giving us the family's first victims. And here are 5 reasons you should watch this movie. Reason number 1, Leatherface.
I like your new face.
So the movie first began in 1939. We then see an unnamed pregnant woman giving birth to a baby boy while working at a Texas slaughterhouse. But she dies while giving birth. So after looking at the deformed child, the supervisor throws the baby in the trash. But that's when we see a younger Luda Mae Hewitt digging in the trash can looking for food. But instead, she finds a crying child and takes him in. But she would later name the baby boy Thomas Brown Hewitt, but we know him as Leatherface. Now 30 years later, we now see an adult Thomas working for the same guy who threw him in the trash. But by this time, the economy is so bad in this town that everyone is moving out. This would mean that the slaughterhouse is also about to shut down. But after being told to leave repeatedly, the enraged Thomas kills the supervisor in a really graphic way, breaking his bones with a sledgehammer and bashing his head in before he could even call the cops. But before leaving, Thomas grabs a chainsaw as he makes his way home. Reason number 2, Hoyt.
You gonna be the motherfucker who eats? Or are you gonna be the poor sorry motherfucker who gets ate?
Now news has already gotten out that Thomas has murdered his boss, and now the lone town officer, Sheriff Hoyt, goes to the Hewitt residence to get Charlie Hewitt, Thomas's brother / uncle, to help bring him in. And when Officer Hoyt spots Thomas walking down the road, he attempts to apprehend him at gunpoint, but is then shot in the head by Charlie.
Shit, I just killed the whole fucking sheriff's department.
Charlie then realizes that there's no lawman left in town. He grabs the good officer's clothes and assumes his identity.
Ladies love men in uniform.
Now this would prove to be a pivotal moment in the Hewitt family's actions, because what happens next is quite alarming. Reason number 3, cannibalism.
Alone, we will rise above it all.
We are then taken to a dinner scene where Charlie Hewitt has a heart-to-heart talk with his family. Now we as the audience find out that prior to this moment, the Hewitts was just a hard-working crew of Southerners who valued living on their land.
We will never abandon the place of our birth.
But all things changes when Thomas kills his supervisor and Charlie kills the real Sheriff Hoyt. And with no jobs and no food to eat, Charlie harkens back to his days as a soldier, when the only means for survival was resorting to cannibalism.
To the good sheriff here, we ain't gonna go hungry tonight.
And that is when the Hewitts go from as normal as you can get hick family to the cannibalistic clan they would be known as in the future.
People may not remember what we say here tonight, but they sure as shit gonna remember what we do.
Reason number 4, Vietnam. Meanwhile, we're introduced to brothers Eric and Dean, who are traveling cross country with their girlfriends Chris and Bailey to enlist in the Vietnam War. But unbeknownst to Eric, Dean, the younger brother, is getting ready to leave the country and dodge the draft. But while they bicker over the morality of war and patriotism, they're being chased down by one of the biker gang members who were giving them grief back at a diner that they stopped at earlier. And the biker managed to run them off the road and then attempts to rob them. But before she can do so, a cop car pulls up and she attempts to play off her crime. But before she can even get a few words out of her mouth, she is shot in the chest by Charlie Hewitt, who by now has assumed the identity of Sheriff Hoyt. So things go from bad to worse as Hoyt abducts the youngsters at gunpoint and drives them to the Hewitt residence. But what follows next is the beginning stages for what will be known as the most bizarre crimes in the annals of American history, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Reason number 5, legs, teeth, and mask. Now, we've already established that this movie is an origin story, but some of the more obscure things we find out is how Sheriff Hoyt lost his front teeth, how Uncle Money lost both of his legs, and most importantly, we find out how Leatherface learned to skin people and wear their face as his mask. Now, this movie answers questions we've wondered while also answering questions we've never asked. However, this film does a great job of giving us an origin story for the Hewitts. Now, let's be mindful that the original version of these characters were the Slaughter and Sawyer family. So this movie is only concerned with the Hewitts, and you have to give them credit for sticking to the basics.
You blasphemous bitch! This is redemption, lady! That's what this is!
Now in the end, Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Beginning was a really good origin story. Now, if we take the movie for what it is, we have to give credit to the filmmakers. Now, this movie wasn't concerned with furthering the story of the Hewitts. It was only concerned with giving us a memorable backstory. Love it or hate it, this movie refused to fall in the trap of some of its predecessors. Prior to this movie, we've seen many people try to further tell a story that really never should have been. Now, I've said this in earlier TCM reviews, but the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is not a movie that should have multiple sequels that further its story. Because if you see all of these sequels as some sort of sequential storytelling, then you've missed the point of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is a movie based on a tale of what happened in Texas. Like many legends, the goal of every TCM movie should be how to tell that one story differently. I mean, the true goal of a Texas Chainsaw Massacre story should be about how you heard the story told to you. Because after all, it's a legend. All legends have differences, and depending on who's telling the story, you will get name changes, different victims, and even different Sawyer family members. So if you've ever been watching those movies trying to make sense of them sequentially, then you fail to understand the story of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Because you should watch every single Texas Chainsaw film as its own narrative. And why is that? Because it's being told by someone different each time.
Come on, Tommy. Ain't no different than the slaughterhouse. Meat, meat, bone's bone.
Stop the fucking dog! Put it down!
Now, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3D is a 2013 action horror that tells the story of how a vigilante mob gets revenge on the Sawyer family for their cannibalistic crimes. But the consequences of their actions come back to haunt them when the last surviving Sawyer returns home.
Do your thing, cuz.
And here are 5 reasons you should watch this movie. Reason number 1, vigilante justice.
About your delivery! Go!
Now, the movie picks up right after the 1973 crimes. We learned that Sally Hardesty reported the crimes, and the local sheriff, Sheriff Hooper, managed to subdue the family and talk them into turning over Jedediah to the authorities. But just as Jed, the man known as Leatherface, is getting set to turn himself in, a vigilante mob appears that includes Bert Hartman along with husband and wife Gavin and Arlene Miller. The vigilante townsfolk are not looking to take the Sawyers in. They want them dead. So the compliant Sawyers goes on a defensive and thus a shootout ensues. So the Sawyers handily lose the battle and Hartman and his gang torch the place, killing every single member of the murderous clan. An act that Sheriff Hooper clearly hates.
This is all you, Bert. For now, Sheriff. And get around the good book.
Reason number 2, the baby.
Yeah. I got her.
Now, after the house is burned and the Sawyers are dead, Hartman and his gang are now taking photos in celebration of their heroism. As they start to take body parts and other mementos with them, Gavin and Arlene Miller finds a barely alive Loretta Sawyer, and she's holding a baby girl. But the Millers kill Loretta and take the child as their own. Now, many years pass, and the child is raised as Heather Miller. Heather, unlike the Sawyer kinsman, grows up fairly normal. I mean, she has a job, friends, and a boyfriend named Ryan. Though she is raised as a Miller, we the audience are quick to acknowledge her Sawyer ways. For starters, she works as a butcher and has a hobby of collecting animal bones to create art. Reason number 3, the estate.
It's a mansion.
So Heather receives a letter in the mail that her aunt, whom she knew nothing about, left her the family's estate. An estate and family she also knew nothing about. But after questioning the Millers, who treat her like trash, they contend that Heather is better off not knowing anything about her real family because they were terrible people. Comment that makes Heather storm off and find out more about them. But while on her way to Newt, Texas, she is accompanied by her best friend Nikki, boyfriend Ryan, and Nikki's boyfriend Kenny. But along the way, they pick up a hitchhiker whom they almost hit with their van. So he travels along with them. And as they arrive, they all go back to the store to pick up some items to prepare for a feast and leave the hitchhiker, Daryl, to clean up. And he ends up robbing them. But before he could leave with the items he plundered, he is surprised to learn that he's not alone. Reason number 4, house guests. It appears that one of the perks of inheriting the home was that it includes an older but still alive Jedediah Sawyer, the man they call Leatherface. Now he kills Daryl in the middle of robbing the house. He kills Kenny while Kenny is preparing dinner. Speaking of dinner, when Heather gets home, she finds that Leatherface is preparing human fingers for dinner. And this leads to a big old chase scene that ends up with Leatherface chasing after Heather and trying to kill her while at a county fair. But we later see Heather at a police station reporting the crimes to the sheriff. But while doing so, Heather comes to learn the town's dirty little secret. A secret that ironically involves her.
We rallied the boys. We torched that place to the ground. End this. Finish what we started years ago.
Reason number 5. Do your thing, cuz.
It's me! It's Heather! It's your cousin!
Now while at the station, Heather finds out about the Sawyers and their crimes. She also finds out about Bert Hartman, who is now the town's mayor, and his vigilante mob. This is when all is revealed that Heather was born Edith Rose Sawyer, the daughter of Loretta Sawyer and cousin of Jedediah. Yes, she and Leatherface are cousins, and she was taken away from her mom when her adoptive parents, Gavin and Arlene, took her from Loretta right before killing her. Now, understanding that Hartman has a mortal vendetta against her family, she leaves the station to get back to the Sawyer mansion. But upon leaving, she is kidnapped and taken to the family's old slaughterhouse to be killed by Hartman and his friends. Now, Hartman wants to finish the job and rid this world of all Sawyers. So Leatherface, who is also looking to kill Heather, finds her and wants to kill her himself. But as Leatherface is bearing down on her to chop her into pieces, he spots the Sawyer family's insignia. And that is when he learns that she's family. And this all culminates in a bloody battle of family ties. The Hartmans and Sawyers, one final time. Now in the end, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3D is a really unique sequel. The filmmakers, like many before them, tried to do something different without retelling the same story. And though it was a big swing, not every concept landed. Now to be fair, not everything needed to land. I mean, there's a lot in this movie to love. There's also a lot in this movie that separates it from other sequels. And this is one of the bloodier versions and also the only entry in the franchise that attempts to create an anti-hero out of Leatherface. And while I don't think it worked very well, it was good enough to enjoy. And this movie sort of sets up a Hatfield versus McCoys with the Sawyers and Hartmans. I must admit, this works in a lot of ways. Sure, many people will trash the line, "do your thing, cuz," but that's a very small thing to dislike in the greater scope of this movie. Because this movie has tons of rewatch value. This movie is entertaining if you take the movie at face value and not try to make sense of it in terms of following a franchise narrative. If you do that, then I promise you a good time with this movie. And yes, I highly recommend it. Now, Leatherface is a 2017 retelling of the origin story of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre's most prominent killer, Jedediah Sawyer, also known as Leatherface. Now, this story picks up during Jed's birthday party in which his family is throwing for him. Now, everyone is happy and feeling quite festive, but this movie establishes itself right off the bat as a Texas Chainsaw Massacre film because this isn't an ordinary birthday party. We already see the family are holding hostages by reenacting the classic dinner scene as they feed one of their hostages a birthday cake made with pig entrails. But things turn up faster as Verna and Drayton, who seems to be the leaders of this version of the clan, give young Jed Sawyer a birthday present. And as you guessed it, it's his very own iconic chainsaw. So the family is gleefully trying to coerce the young Jed to power up the chainsaw and kill the hostage. But the young boy is apprehensive, and that is when Drayden forces him to cut into the knee of the hostage. But even that is not enough to make Jed a killer. So he tosses the chainsaw away as he wants nothing to do with harming another person. So then his mother Verna scolds him and then consoles him. But we as the audience see the hostage receive a ball-peen hammer to the head, thus crushing his skull and killing him. And it was done by none other than Grandpa Sawyer. Now, in most iterations of these films, Grandpa is usually willing to kill his victims, but is just too frail to execute the kills. But this younger, more spry Grandpa turns this guy's head into mashed potatoes. So we later pick up with this young couple driving down the road with the woman trying to get a little cuddle time with her boyfriend. He spots something in the road and nearly crashes, but manages to maintain his treading. But the girlfriend gets out to see what's lying in the road. We then get a visual of a young boy wrapped up in a pig's carcass with the head of a cow as a mask. The little boy then dashes off into the woods and the young woman chases after him. Now, why she does this, I don't know, because he's obviously okay as he was able to run away from her and play roadside games with animal carcasses. But being the typical horror movie character, people are just stupid in horror movies. Now, in the end, the young woman is lured into the Sawyer barn and falls into a trap set by both Drayden and Jed. And although she's not dead, she is hanging on for dear life. But she is finally killed when the Sawyers drop an entire engine motor on top of her faint body, thus smashing her into pieces. But as it turns out, the young woman was the daughter of the local sheriff, Hal Hartman. Drayden is then arrested by the authorities, but maintains his innocence. And that is when Ranger Hartman places a gun to his head and vows to shoot him. But his fellow officers remind him that he must do the right things by the book and by the law. And that is when Verna demands that Hal releases her sons. But since this isn't the first incident where people have mysteriously died and the Sawyers were at the scene of the crime, Ranger Hartman, out of revenge, takes all of Verna's children because he feels she needs to know what it's like to lose a child herself. But since Drayden was of age, we can assume that he did a little prison time. But as for the others, they were taken in protective custody. So this movie picks up 10 years later, and we are at Gorman Institute, where we learned that due to legislation in Texas, there was a program that removed children who were in bad parent homes and given new names and identities to serve as a fresh start. That is where we meet Lizzie, or Nurse Elizabeth, who is excited to be the best possible nurse and create a friendly atmosphere for her new patients. So she is briefly warned that many of the children in Gorman are not good kids, and if they weren't there, they would be in prison or in a mental institution. But being new, young, and bright-eyed, Nurse Liz attempts to make friends with all of the patients. But that is where we meet Bud, Jackson, Isaac, and Clarice, who are not as innocent as they seem on the surface. And that is when Verna Sawyer comes back into the picture. Or shall I say, Verna Carson, who is since married into money, and her husband is now a ruthless lawyer. So she's at the hospital to get her son Jed back. And after being told that she could never have her son back, she takes it upon herself to break Jed out of the institution to come back with her. And that is that breach that causes all chaos to unfold, because the patients start to attack the staff and the entire place is put on lockdown. But not before Jackson, Clarice, Isaac, and Bud are able to overpower the guards and escape. And as for Bud, he bludgeons 2 guards to death and also Dr. Lang in the manner that is consistent with the iconic behavior of Leatherface. Now, due to a little twist of fate, and with Nurse Liz coming to the rescue of the main children earlier in the movie, when one of the patients tries to attack her, Jackson comes to her rescue, and she has no other option but to leave with them. Because though Jackson and Bud try to protect her, Nurse Liz is essentially kidnapped and held hostage by the group due to her position as a bargaining chip if they need it. Because Isaac and Clarice are no fans of the nurse, and both want her dead. But meanwhile, Ranger Hartman investigates the scene at Gorman, and he warns his fellow officers that whoever did this was not the work of a confused child, but someone who is truly evil. He even instructs them that to consider the escapees as armed and dangerous, and to develop a shoot-first mentality upon spotting them. So the crew then winds up at a diner, and they end up doing their best variation of dining and dashing. So they rob the place, kill a few people, including the cop, and completely wreak havoc. But this causes one of the bystanders to shoot Bud in the stomach, and being the hulking beast that he is, it barely manages to slow him down as the group escapes. But at this point, with the way this movie is set up, you would think you're watching The Devil's Rejects with teenagers. We then get a love scene with Isaac and Clarice, Liz nursing Bud back to health, and even a fight scene between Isaac and Jackson when Liz tries to escape. But once again, Jackson keeps coming to her rescue, and this causes Isaac to tell Bud that he's an idiot and a fool and doesn't understand why God bothered to make him. But later, we're taken to a scene where Isaac is taking a leak, and Bud bashes him in the head with a tree branch. Then, once again, we get another iconic scene where Bud is dragging Isaac's faint body through the woods, slowly and methodically, contemplating what to do with him. But Bud then takes Isaac's head next to a nearby rock, opens up his mouth, wedges his teeth onto a rock, and with his feet, he crushes Isaac's skull in. I mean, this is a very brutal scene. And even though they cut away, the brutality is still there. It's like an homage to the 1974's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where the anticipation, sound, and acting fills in all the gaps of what we don't see. But more importantly, these actions are typical of the eventual Leatherface character, and it's good to see the origins of his character take shape. But the next morning, Clarice is looking for missing Isaac and ends up finding Ranger Hartman and his officers. After torturing Clarice for a while, Hartman shoots her in the head once she crosses the line and mocks his dead daughter. As you can see, Hartman is very reminiscent of Sheriff Waddell from the Rob Zombie movies. He realizes that to destroy the monsters, you must first become a monster. And while some would say that he's supposed to be a model policeman and protect the integrity of the badge, and you would be correct, but he's dealing with people whose moral compass is upside down, and the only thing they understand is violence. And Hartman is the perfect protagonist in this situation. Now, Hartman and his men have their eyes set on Bud and Jackson because they then unleash hunting dogs as they feel that they are close. But the duo, along with Nurse Liz, who's caught in the middle of loyalty and hostage, manage to evade the hunting dogs by hiding inside the dead carcass of a cow. And later, all three emerge from the cow's body, a bloody mess. And that is when Nurse Liz spots an officer. She starts to scream for help, and now it becomes a face-to-face meeting with the two escapees and law enforcement. And we then get a scene where a police officer is shooting Bud point blank as he's walking toward the officer. As he's tanking these bullets, he starts to choke the officer, and boom, out of nowhere, the officer blows Bud's brains out. And now as a viewer, you're looking at this like, wait, what just happened? He just shot Leatherface. Does Leatherface die in this movie? What's going on? But meanwhile, that same officer dies horrifically as Jackson disarms him, bludgeons him with his own gun, drags his body over to his own squad car, wedges his head in between the door of the car, and just slams and kicks and squashes his head in. Now, as both he and his hostage, Nurse Liz, drive off, now he's in the passenger side freaking out over Bud's death, and Nurse Liz is trying to talk some sense into Jackson. But then Hartman is gaining ground on them both and starts to shoot, and one of the strays catches Jackson right across the face. And that is when reality sets in, because at this point we've been had, took, bamboozled, led astray, because Leatherface was never Bud. Bud was just a red herring. I mean, he was the perfect picture of what a young Leatherface was supposed to look like, but no. Jackson would prove to be Leatherface because he is Jedediah Sawyer. Because this is confirmed when Hartman drags Nurse Liz out of the car and ties up Jackson. He informs her that Jackson is Jedediah Sawyer and his plan is to kill him tonight. But Hartman himself has also lost touch with reality because he also plans to kill Nurse Liz, who's innocent, was just a hostage. We then get another scene where one of Hartman's men informs Verna that Jed is close and that Hartman has him. But apparently, he had an arrangement to help Verna find her son in exchange for money. So she tosses the money at him, and as he goes to pick it up, Nubens, also known as the hitchhiker from the 1974 movie, stabs him, and both Nubens and Drayton throw the officer into their feral pig pen, and the pigs eat him alive. And so we finally get a face-off with the Sawyer family and Hartman. because he now has every one of them in his sights and is about to pull the trigger when he is ambushed by Jed/Jackson. And we're then taken to a scene where Verna first finds a wounded Jed. So she stitches up his face together and then clamps that bullet wound down with a brand new mask. And for the first time, we see the beginning stages of Leatherface. And around this time is when the movie finally becomes a Texas Chainsaw Massacre film, because that's when Nurse Liz wakes up and she's in the room with a wounded and still alive Hartman. So the two try to escape the Sawyer house, and this allows us as the viewers to get a look at the classic and iconic look inside that house that started it all back in 1974. I mean, because there's bones, carcasses, blood, and limbs everywhere. But they are quickly captured and brought right back into the Sawyers' living room, where we get our first full body shot of a young Leatherface. Because instead of trying to beg and plead for his life, Hartman antagonizes Leatherface and he gets his hands cut off with the chainsaw. And then as this coup de grace, Jed plunges the chainsaw into the chest of Hartman and guts him like a fish. I mean, this is one of the bloodier scenes, and I think this payoff was really great because this is Leatherface fully realized. Because this is finally a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie, Nurse Liz escapes from Nubens and run away. And as Leatherface run after her, she manages to get her leg caught in a bear trap. But when he starts to bear down on her, she appeals to his humanity by insisting that she was always nice to him and tried to help him. And this appears to work. But Verna arrives and speaks against Liz. And Liz continued to appeal to his humanity because, as I said earlier, it appears to work. But Liz makes one mistake. And while appealing to his humanity, she calls Verna crazy. The one thing you never do to a Sawyer is talk about the family. Because we as normal human beings might say the phrase that blood is thicker than water. But a wise man once said that the saw is family. And this causes Leatherface to cut Liz's head off with his chainsaw, and he lets out a primal scream. But not one like the other screams. This is a different kind of scream. Because one can easily say that this was his last sign of humanity left with him. Because Leatherface traditionally will always act on demand when his family gives him a command. But there was a bit of humanity left in him. And when he killed the only one person who was ever nice to him, this signified that Jed is dead. And he is, and will always be, Leatherface. And as the final scene, we get this iconic shot of Leatherface stitching together a new mask. But this mask is made from Nurse Liz's face. And he puts it on and even puts on makeup. I mean, this is a direct callback to his woman's face in the 1974 Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. What an ending. But should you watch this movie? If so, then why? Reason number one, it's unique. I mean, this movie retells the Texas Chainsaw Massacre story from a fresh set of eyes. And though most people found this movie to be a bad movie, I like the liberties taken with this to give us a new origin story. And if I were to retell the story, it would be closer to this movie, Leatherface, than any other movies. But hey, that's just me. What about you? And reason number two, Tobe Hooper and Kim Hinkle were involved. Now, having the originators of this movie to be involved in a sequel is always good. And I think their involvement meant that this retelling stuck within the boundaries of what could be messed with without destroying any of the pre-established continuity. And reason number three, the swerve. Now, I honestly like that they gave us a red herring using Bud for the majority of this movie. I mean, he looked the part and acted the part, and to throw us a curveball near the end to that payoff. And for me, this movie does have a great payoff. You can insert this movie into the franchise, make it canon, and never lose any of the pre-established continuity. And reason number four, Stephen Dorff saves this movie. Now, when you're dealing with a movie about a murderous clan, you need a protagonist that is willing to go the distance and see that they are killed. And I think Stephen Dorff gave us a character that didn't allow the murderous clan to run wild. And as I stated earlier, he was Sheriff Waddell to the Firefly family. I mean, this killer family needs a legitimate threat, because without a threat, this movie itself becomes repetitive. And Stephen Dorff balanced this movie out, and I'm grateful for the role he played. And reason number five, Hooperisms. Now, this movie could have been ultra bloody, but sometimes it opted to use sound, atmosphere, and psychology to create a kill scene. And in this movie, it worked. Yes, some of the scenes were bloody, but this movie had so so many opportunities to give us an Art the Clown type of bloodbath, but instead he used a lot of what made the 1974 movie great. And to pay homage to that was really special. Because in the end, this movie started as a fugitive movie and morphed into a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. And I appreciate the liberties and the transitions this movie went through to tell that story. And to do so, they made sure that Jed/Jackson would do things much different than Leatherface. Because Leatherface doesn't have his own mind. He allows his family to think for him. And Jed and Jackson are somewhat leaders. And to perfectly show that progress into Leatherface was a brilliant idea. And I highly recommend this movie. And until next time, when CEDtalks horror. Now, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a 2022 reboot of the 1974 original. Now, this film tells the story of how a group of social media influencers seeking to revitalize a small town does so at the behest of the local residents. But when an accident causes one of the locals to die, her last surviving family member is seeking vengeance. And here are 5 reasons you should watch this movie. Reason number 1. Influencers.
A restaurant will be first, and you have to just inspire more people to follow.
So social media stars Dante Spivey and his girlfriend Ruth have decided to bring their progressive values to Harlow, Texas. And in doing so, they want to take the area, gentrify it with as many like-minded individuals as they can find. Now, in an effort to bring the town back to life, the crew is set on building Harlow in their image to make it a more liberal utopia that will attract more new blood with new ideas. Now, while the idea seems perfect in theory, it's not popular amongst those living there.
Oh, please, be respectful for the town.
Reason number 2. Locals.
So you guys are what, like a cult?
We're idealistic individuals who want to build a better world.
Yeah, that's a cult.
Now, the local residents of Harlow, Texas are not fans of influencers Dante, Ruth, Lila, and Melody. Now, while the group plans to revitalize Harlow, people living there aren't very welcoming. Now, Harlow, Texas is a traditional Texas area. And by that, they are a city full of gun-toting, Confederate flag-flying, small-town conservatives who are set in their ways. Now, the idea of city folk looking to make it better rubs everyone there the wrong way. Now, they consider Dante and his crew to be troublemakers and just want to be left alone. However, Melody and Lila have ties to the area, and if anyone can make the locals warm up to the crew, it would be those two. But Melody has a problem with open carry. The reason being, her sister Lila is a survivor of a recent school shooting, and she's very protective of her. But in Texas, everything is bigger, including the guns.
Sure, big gun makes you uncomfortable.
I've seen bigger.
Reason number 3, Jenny.
What are you doing in our house?
Meet Virginia Jenny McComber, a longtime Harlow native and one of the oldest living residents. Although in bad health, Jenny still runs the town's only orphanage, a place that she's been in charge of for nearly 50 years. But during those 50 years, Jenny has helped manage and rehabilitate a bunch of troubled youths. Now, according to her, she's dealt with all sorts of people from different backgrounds and with different issues. But at some point prior to the film, it is told that Jenny lost ownership of the orphanage and she's been living there illegally. However, she insists that she's worked things out with the bank and she's within her rights to stay at the orphanage. But her ownership of the property is challenged by Dante and his crew. And when she refuses to move out of the home, Dante calls the cops and attempt to forcefully remove her. But then she dies.
Sheriff, I think she croaked.
Reason number 4, Jenny dies. While being removed from the orphanage, Jenny suffers a heart attack and would need medical care. But on her way to the hospital, she dies. But at the same time, Dante and his friends become aware that Jenny does have legal ownership of the orphanage and that she likely died from the stress of being illegally removed. Now, while that is tragic in and of itself, her last surviving relative is angry. And it's not so much that he's angry, it's who he is. Yes, for the past 50 years, Jenny has been taking care of Kenneth Kenny Slaughter. Now, Kenny is a tall brute who is verbally mute. But back in 1973, Kenny, along with his family, murdered a group of youths named Kurt, Pam, Jerry, and Franklin in one of the most bizarre crimes in the annals of American history, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Reason number 5, Massacre. Now, prior to her death, Jenny tried to warn the cops and the influencers not to remove her from her home. She insists that it's for the good of her adopted son, Kenny. She also said that for 50 years, she's managed to keep Kenny normal, that should he be made to live outside, it would be a bad idea if they were put out of their home. However, what the influencers weren't aware of was that Kenny is the infamous Leatherface. Yes, the serial killer who chops up people with his chainsaw, skins their faces, and wears it as a mask. So the only one who was capable of keeping Leatherface from killing people just died. And when Jenny died, his humanity died with her. And most importantly, he witnessed the entire incident unfold as both the influencers and cops caused the death of his mother. And yes, this movie lives up to the title because Leatherface goes home and grabs his chainsaw and he runs roughshod over everyone in Harlow, Texas. Now in the end, Texas Chainsaw Massacre was a bloody mess. Now what do I mean? It had tons of gore, great kills, and a really neat story. But when making a Texas Chainsaw film, you want a high body count. And you are there for the story and the blood. I must say that this movie delivers in spades. However, the movie could have been much better. Now for starters, Leatherface is at his best when he's part of an ensemble, part of a crew, a clan, a family if you will. He needs to be told what to do. He needs a father or a mother figure to make him the family's muscle. But when you remove his family from the movie, you make Leatherface basically a Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers. And it's not Leatherface. If you don't have a person making or directing him to kill, then he's just a mentally retarded man-child. But this movie still was a lot of fun, and it's not a bad movie. It's however just not one of the best Texas Chainsaw movies. Now this movie left a lot of meat on the bone. At the end of the day, I still recommend it. And until next time, when Ced talks horror.
Fuck off.